Welcome and thank you to everyone joining us. Today, I have the great opportunity to talk to Dr. Barbara Bushman. Dr. Bushman is a fellow of the American College of Sports Medicine and holds 4 ACSM certifications as a personal trainer, exercise physiologist, a clinical exercise physiologist, and program director. She earned her doctorate from the University of Toledo and has been a faculty member at Missouri State University since 1995. Now, I should clarify that it was Southwest Missouri State until 2005 when the university changed its name. So during her tenure, she has taught numerous courses, including anatomy, physiology, exercise physiology, sports conditioning, research methods, and health appraisal and exercise testing. She's also been involved in 6 book projects, including the one we're going to talk about today, Fitness Professionals Handbook, 8th edition. So, Dr. Bushman, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Now, like I kind of laid out there in that brief bio, you have had quite the career, especially in academia and educating the industry on fitness, kinesiology and training. But how did that all start? What's the origin of your interest in this field?
I was an active kid,
Yeah.
enjoyed science, and I think exercise physiology is a perfect marriage of someone who enjoys physical activity and exercise and enjoys science, because those two really do come together um, to truly understand this field. One side or the other, I think you're a little unbalanced otherwise.
Right. All right. Yeah, you've definitely done a good job in, kind of translating your passion there into your career. As far as this book, I mean, I can tell the kind of your passion that goes into this. It's a pretty impressive book. I'd say a pretty complete book in the context of offering a full scope of information that trainers need in order to have successful careers. I feel fortunate to have had excellent professors and mentors that have helped me along the way, especially when I first started my career. But something that I'll admit that took me a little bit of time and to fully grasp is that my clients didn't have the education that I had. Now, that sounds obvious to a lot of people probably, but I guess the point is I had to realize that the way I was taught to explain things in class was different than the way that I would have to explain them to my clients or the way that they would understand them. So I think you phrased this as the terminology of exercise. How important is that communication component for fitness and wellness professionals?
I think it's foundational. And that actually is something that I really stressed in my years of teaching in that health appraisal and exercise testing class. Students would, on their assignments along the margin, would be like, what does this mean?
Hmm.
Don't explain it to me. Their assignments were very applied, and I wanted them to take fitness test results and explain it to a client.
Hmm.
And in my mind, again, we're learning like a new language, both
Hmm.
in our education and then often in our communication, right, with colleagues. It's more efficient and precise to use the terms. But
Hmm.
when we're talking with a client, it can be overwhelming. They are potentially out of their element.
Hmm.
This is new for them. And so they can feel very hesitant to ask for clarification. So we may throw out, aerobic capacity or muscular strength versus muscular endurance and power and things like that, and think that we're being very clear.
Hmm.
And the client may just really not fully understand what we're trying to say. So I
Right.
think it's on the fitness professional to find a way to translate, if you will, the science into a way that's understandable without being insulting. So
Right.
rather than if I do a bike test to look at aerobic capacity, I don't want to just say your heart looks really good,
Hmm.
a little insulting.
Right.
I also don't want to just say your aerobic capacity is good. There, that also is incomplete. So rather explain to them we're looking at how the body can take in and utilize oxygen. The higher that value is, the better in terms
Hmm.
of your ability to do large muscle continuous type of activity. So when you go out for a walk or a jog or a bike, it means you'll be at a lower percentage of your maximal capacity.
Right.
Now they are understanding what we're talking about. So doing things like that, giving analogies, examples of things, um, even within our administration of the test, doing demonstrations can be very helpful rather than trying to direct.
Mhm.
Just I used to be the subject for practical exams,
Okay.
and students would try to just verbally tell me what to do, and I always was the client that had no idea what they were talking about.
Yeah.
And so, and inevitably, they'd be like looking at me like, "Why are you not just doing this?" And I'm like, "I'm doing exactly what you're telling me because I don't know.
Yep.
The client's not going to know." So sort of being patient and really taking the time as if it's the first time that you've
Mhm.
administered this test or you've explained this test result, even though it may be the hundredth, the thousandth time after you've been in the field for a long time. You can start to sort of get too relaxed and
Mhm.
realize this may be the client's first experience. So
Yeah.
explain it that way and just be, supportive and clear and open to clarification.
That reminds me, I had a client, again, this was early on in my career, and I wanted to make sure that she knew that I was smart, that I knew what she was talking about. And I realized that was a little bit of a mistake because I think I I think I had her doing a single leg deadlift, and I was trying to explain it to her. I was trying to use the exact words for all the muscles that I knew in my head, and she very smart, retired teacher. But she would look at me with blank stares every now and then. And finally, I won't use the words that she used, especially on this interview, but she finally said, I don't mean to be crass, but is that, and then I kind of laughed a little bit and I said, yeah, like that's what we're talking about. So, and that I think that's when it really clicked, like, hey, like I don't need to use all these terms and this terminology with some of my clients because
Be confident without having to sort of show off because it just ends up confusing.
yeah.
And not that you don't need that information, but
Mhm.
you sort of just the translation aspect is I think my students found the most challenging. But when they
Yeah.
got it, it was really neat to see their ability to take everything they knew and then still explain it in an accurate way that was still understandable.
Yep, I think that's a very good way to put it. So, yeah, speaking of assessments, you were talking about that a little bit. There are two full sections in the book about assessments and exercise prescription. I think there are six chapters specifically on testing and assessment, and another four on exercise prescription. Now, I think that's so important. We see in the industry a lot of generalized programs that are implemented for individuals, and I think that could be a good thing for people. We know that a lot of people don't meet the recommended guidelines for physical activity, so they're still getting a lot of benefit from that. But I tend to lean more on the side of individualizing programs as much as possible. So I guess taking those two components into account, testing and assessing, and then prescription, how important is that to get really specific to help those clients really dig in and get the most out of their training?
Right. And I think doing simple assessments, and that's really what we're focusing on in the book, not things that require a lot of laboratory equipment. And so being able to have assessments for the major components of fitness. So we're looking at aerobic fitness, muscular fitness, flexibility, some neuromotor type of insights and taking that information then and creating an exercise program that focuses appropriately.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean, no one is going to be excellent in all categories or very likely poor in all categories.
Right.
They're going to fall along different levels. And that's why we look at some of the percentile rankings so that we can have an ability to track an individual over time. So if I find, I think we have an example in the book that someone had been doing a walking program for an extended period of time, like 5 years or something like that, and really didn't do any of the other areas of fitness. They were just doing a walking program. So they
Okay.
have an assessment, and surprise, surprise, their results reflect that. They're,
Right.
in a pretty good percentile for aerobic fitness, somewhat lacking
Mhm.
in the muscular fitness and flexibility. So then the job of the fitness professional is to look at that and say, okay, we're doing really good in this area. Here's some things we might want to consider to look at, maybe variety or expanding out, but you're really solid here. Now, some other areas, and sometimes we like to avoid talking about, oh, I don't want to make them feel bad. I just see it as extensive opportunity for improvement.
There you go.
So if
Yeah.
someone's values are a little bit lower than what we would want, that's not something to dance around, but just say, if we focused on this, the muscular fitness, it actually is very beneficial in these other areas of your health. Same thing with flexibility. So all of these will actually work together. So the areas that were currently a little lower than we would want, let's focus some attention here and see how we can build that into a nice complete program. So to me, it's never a we're done here and oh, I don't want to talk about this. it's
Mhm.
it's all together, and we need to bring that into a program then that meets the person's needs. And I think in the example, the person was traveling and they were, well, I know how to do my walking program when I travel. How do I do these other things? Flexibility, that makes sense. You can
Mhm.
do that. But maybe you throw in some resistance bands, and
Okay.
there's some examples of exercises related to that. So just helping the person in their current situation to find a way that it's really not as hard as
Mhm.
sometime we anticipate, that fitting all those components in will be.
And it sounds like you're trying to, paint or create a bigger picture for the client to help them kind of understand like every single area that they need to be mindful of in order to be that healthy individual that they want to be.
For sure. And I've had people say, "Oh, it's just too much." When you add
Mhm.
all these things, it's really you fit it in. It doesn't have to be this weighty, um, you know, 2 to 3 days per week of muscular fitness
Mhm.
will get us in where we want in terms of recommendations. Now, again, different athlete populations or people who have different competitive goals, obviously, they're going to have a different approach within their training. But for a general fitness program, you can fit that in and maybe do some changes within, what you do after you finish dinner in the evening. Maybe you do go for a walk, or before dinner you slip in a little bit of resistance training. So
Mhm.
finding ways that work into a person's schedule, I think, is a big piece of it, rather than just telling them, oh, you're going to show up at 6 a.m. and we're going to do this workout, and they have job obligations or family obligations. Need to step back and say, how am I going to help you be successful by how we're going to fit this into how you live?
And it sounds like, I guess to another point that I wanted to bring up, that's helping them really create, I guess, incorporate fitness into their lifestyle and see the long-term benefits. When I was thinking about this, at this point, I train primarily youth athletes. So I think the youngest that I've worked with is probably 7 years old. A little more entertaining, maybe at that age. We work on, as you know, we work on more like movement capacities and all that. And then obviously as they get older now, I think a lot of trainers maybe working with athletes want to help them, achieve their immediate goals or more immediate goals as far as their sport. But another way to look at that, I think, is, setting them up for long-term success in terms of creating healthy habits so that when their playing days are over, they are able to continue that and maintain that lifestyle for a lot of other benefits that we know as far as fitness.
Right. And developing, like you're talking about with a youth, developing those motor skills is
Mhm.
very important. Kids that don't have that opportunity, that don't feel comfortable in movement, they're not going to stick with being active. And that's
Mhm.
why we see the drop off in participation. If we look at, I believe, in the 18 to 44-year-old age range, if we're looking at meeting the guidelines, it's less than a third.
Mhm.
And that I mean, we can look at it as glass half empty, or we can look at it as, wow, we have a huge opportunity to impact the population to see the value, both the short term, when we talk about, improved sleep and mood and, glucose control. And then you also look at the long term, the chronic diseases. I think one of the publications with older adults had looked at the benefits of activity, physical activity related to 30 different chronic diseases that were
Mm,
documented in the literature. And I'm like, that seems like a pretty win-win situation.
yeah.
I don't think we have anything that we're apologizing on what we're recommending that people do. It's just such a positive, lifelong, if we can start young, and some of the guidelines, a recent paper that I wrote, we're looking at, from birth onward. Okay, here's
Mm,
what we're looking at, from, rolling activities, that caregivers are helpful with, and moving up through the preschool years and into elementary and beyond, and how we can specifically encourage so that by the time they're in high school, they're actually engaging in about an hour of moderate to vigorous activity that includes, aerobic, muscular, and bone strengthening activities, which is our recommendation for youth.
I'm really glad that you brought up that study that you did. And I'm interested in not only that, but maybe some of your other studies and things that you've learned over the years as far as you know, promoting that mindset of, staying active, staying physically fit, because like we're talking about maybe younger individuals or youth athletes, they're probably not thinking about those chronic diseases that they might end up having later on in life, but it sounds like if we can, instill fitness as a lifestyle or get them interested in it, then it will carry on. So hopefully they don't have to worry about those chronic diseases later on in life.
Right. And again, I think that goes back to if you enjoy movement,
Mm.
as a kid growing up on a farm in the country, I was running everywhere, whether
Okay.
it was to go play, catch a butterfly, with my dog, all of those things. That movement was just something that I enjoyed doing. So if we can, instill that in kids, that it's not all of our recreation is not a sedentary thing, maybe
Mhm.
watching someone else be active, or, screen time. Um, won't get into that. But looking at ways that we can encourage that so that our movement is then something that we're enjoying.
Do you think that goes back to the exercise prescription that we were talking about in terms of, prescribing exercises for clients or for athletes that they're going to enjoy doing that'll also help them get to their goals so that they, like you just said, so that they do enjoy that, so it's something that they don't dread doing every day.
I've always said the fun, the enjoyment aspect is foundational, because if you don't enjoy doing something, I don't know. Most people, I do not think will stick with an activity if there's not some level of enjoyment. So I think it's great if people enjoy working in groups.
Mm.
Now there are others of us that maybe enjoy the working out alone. It's our escape time. So you have to find out what works for a person. I recall at the university there was a group of folks that would get together to run. And they were like clockwork. I bet their feet hit the corner, going into the neighborhood to run the same spot. I bet they told each other the same stories. But it was not only was it helping with their fitness, but it was a social aspect. And so they didn't miss, right? This group,
Mm.
they were a wonderful testament of what the habit of exercise can be. And so I think finding out what works for the individual, whether it's group activity, whether they see it as an escape, that they like to go by themselves, but that requires talking, right, to the
Yeah.
client, and not just saying, oh, this is what works. I need to find out what's going to work for the person.
I guess to that point, how much of the exercise prescription component also goes into, I guess, like you just said, finding out what that individual enjoys doing. I think sometimes I have been guilty of it in the past, thinking like that this person needs to do the specific exercise, like they need to, like they have to do a trap bar deadlift, or they have to do, a barbell squat or whatever. But I guess the bigger picture, we can see some of those same benefits by using a different exercise that that person might enjoy doing a lot more.
Exactly. Or if there is an exercise that maybe isn't just fun in and of itself, let's face it, I'm not saying every day I run to my workout room and just with glee,
Right.
that you see that what I do today is going to allow me to do something that I want to be able to do differently tomorrow. So, if I enjoy kayaking, well, that's important that I have good muscular strength. I've got some flexibility. And so by working on those things in my routine, then when I do those activities in my recreation, I have that benefit as well. So I think linking some of those things so clients understand, a particular exercise that they may be like, I don't know, why are they making me do this?
Mhm.
And I mean, I've had that in recovery from injury, some simple little exercise. And I'm thinking, is this really worth my time? And then I realized what it was doing was helping with some alignment, helping with my proprioception, that it was very simple. But man, it was really important for me getting back to where I wanted to be in terms of my fitness and ability to do other activities. So sometime I think if we take the 2 minutes to explain that connection, we have
Mhm.
people that are much more willing to do the activity that we really know will be the most beneficial to them.
I feel like you're reading my mind because I was thinking back to what we started with, that whole communication aspect and kind of explaining to the client, in their terms and language that they're able to understand how it's going to benefit them and
Exactly.
how important that really is. So, um, one thing, in thinking about all this, one thing that I love about the fitness industry is that when you get certified, you know, it isn't just a recommendation that you continue to learn in the field and continue to stay updated. It's actually a requirement if you want to keep that certification. Not everyone enjoys that side, but it is a requirement. I think I really appreciate that about this industry. So there are so many different, resources that you can use. I know this book is definitely one of them. Like I talked about how complete it is. Aside from that, like why is it so crucial, do you think, for fitness professionals to stay updated and to continue learning about fitness?
Our field is having some longevity in the field, and I've been retired now. Actually, this book was my retirement project, so didn't feel very retired. Um, but just seeing how things have progressed and how guidelines have been refined,
Mhm.
sometimes changed, but usually small shifts as we get more information, and that is exciting and it can feel really daunting that where did this come from? How did I not keep up on this? And so I think that's one of the benefits of a book like the Fitness Professionals Handbook, um, is that we have taken the time, a lot of time and effort by some amazing authors in the various chapters to make sure this provides the most current information at that moment. Based on professional organizations, research studies. This isn't an opinion based. And I
Mhm.
think that's the one of the biggest concerns that I have when someone has a question, and we all do this.
Mhm.
We Google,
Yeah.
we check YouTube, we go to sources that may not be referenced. Some are for sure, but many do not have the foundation or may not accurately reflect what the guidelines, position papers, research really support. So what you don't want to be is a headline grabber. And I mean, there's so many examples of this where, a correlational study where we just see a relationship between two things and it's turned into, well, if you do this, then this will happen. And I'm like, no, no, no.
Right.
Correlation is not cause and effect.
Right.
Our mantra in our research class.
Right.
And so as a fitness professional, I think we have actually a pretty huge responsibility. If a client asks us a question, because they are also going to be on all of these different sources, right?
Mhm.
Especially with social media. And so they're going to come and say, what do you think about fill in the blank?
Yeah.
And you may or may not have heard of it. And I always told my students, please do not bluff. Bluffing is bad.
Mhm.
What we want to do is say, I've not heard of that. And it's fine to admit that you may not have heard of everything that is, across social media, but I will look into it. And when we get back together, I'm going to have some more information for you and then follow up.
Mhm.
That will garner greater respect from your client than if you give them a halfway answer that they know doesn't make sense or doesn't match up or seems even worse than the original source.
Yeah.
So taking the time to do that, and that's where I think having something like the Fitness Professionals Handbook that does cover so many topics within the field, and there's research highlights and application points that you have that place to maybe get a beginning point, and then you know also where to go to get good, solid information. Looking at professional organizations like the American College of Sports Medicine, National Strength and Conditioning Association, American Heart Association, American Diabetes Association. Um, all of those are reflected heavily throughout the Fitness Professionals Handbook because those are the organizations that are pulling together. Let's face it, we don't have time to read the 400 references that they pull together. If you look at the reference list on the end of position stands, it's
Yeah.
just so impressive.
Right.
Um, and so they're doing the heavy lifting on that, but we want to go to those sources as opposed to um, sort of unsupported sources. And then I think our clients they'll see that we're speaking from knowledge.
Yeah.
And that's very effective. And I think it's what we owe to the clients.
Yeah, that's making me think of a couple of examples there where I've had in the past with clients where, they've brought in ideas that they have seen from social media at some point, and I can tell they're really interested in that area or that topic. It sounds like something they might enjoy doing, like an exercise they might enjoy doing. And even, I don't, I mean, you might have an opinion on this too, but like, even if I might disagree with what they've learned, I can tell that they're interested. So then I would go back and I would find like research, or I'd find another article that was more appropriate for what they needed to do and send that to them, and they can kind of see how they might correlate. But then, to your point, I think if it's coming from a fitness professional that they know, then they're going to be more likely to follow that advice as opposed to something else.
Right. And
But
there's some good in what we can find in the Google world.
right.
Um, but sometimes it does need some refinement. And that again is where being the knowledgeable resource for our client, someone that they come to trust, that relationship, and Dr. Buckworth talks about that in her chapter, the trustworthiness that needs to be in place. Clients share a lot of information,
Mhm.
right? We learn a lot about the individuals that we're working with. Just like over the years, you learn a lot about the students in my class, and that's really very confidential information.
Mhm.
That's not to be shared publicly because that's a trust situation,
Mhm.
and so that's a little piece of it as well when you're having those conversations that they know that what we're talking about is going to stay between us. You're going to help me work through answering this question. And like I said, that follow up is so key.
Yeah.
If you don't know an answer, say you don't know,
Mhm.
but then truly do follow up.
Yeah.
And it becomes a good thing for you. It's a little bit of your own
Yep.
continuing education,
Yep.
as well as for the client.
Yeah, and I think to your other point about all the information that is in the book, um, not everyone, even in the profession, enjoys reading research, but you've kind of put that all together so that they don't necessarily maybe have to read all the research, but they can at least find a lot of really good information, but then also find other resources that they might be able to reference to learn more about that. So I do appreciate about that too, because um, I think there are a lot of fitness professionals on either side of the conversation. They might not want to do all the extra research, but they still want to keep learning. So that's something else that I really appreciate about the book too.
And I think that throughout we have a lot of case studies
Yep.
and practical application points. That was an important aspect because just knowing I think that's why I always liked my class that had the quote lecture, in
Mhm.
classroom and then also in the lab where I actually told them, I'm like, I want to talk the least amount possible. I want us doing, I want you to interact with one another as if you're working with a client.
Yeah.
And the more that you do that, the more comfortable you become in doing those assessments, whether it's blood pressure or bike test or strength assessment, whatever it is.
And like you mentioned, that those case studies, those are so important because they are like real life examples that people can use, and maybe they'll find some type of relationship in from whatever they're taking from the case study, and they can apply that directly to a situation that they're dealing with their client too.
Right. Yeah.
So
I mean,
valuable.
those seeing the concepts take life, I think, is an important aspect as opposed to, oh, this just seems like information, but how does it really relate if you're working with someone?
Yep. Excellent way to put it there. This has been a great conversation, a really important one that I think a lot of trainers and coaches, and fitness professionals will get a lot from. Maybe there are some individuals listening that haven't been certified yet, but they're thinking about, jumping into this career. You've definitely provided a lot of insight, a lot of great information that people can lean on there. Um, or maybe there are people that aren't interested in, getting into the career, but they want to keep learning more about this industry and like you detailed in it, the assessments, the exercise prescription. Um, I highly recommend if you are in any of those categories to continue learning from Dr. Bushman and the other what is that 18 contributors to this
I think I lost
resource.
count. I'm glad you counted. I want to
Yeah,
know.
I went back and looked because it is so thorough. And I know that a lot of this information is shared from a lot of other contributors that have invested a lot of time into this. So if you're watching this, if you're listening, definitely pick up your copy, the Fitness Professionals Handbook. This is the eighth edition to it. There are a lot of updates if you have seen the previous version. So like I said at the beginning, it covers, everything you need from, the importance and benefits of physical activity, anatomy and physiology. There are dietary considerations in the book, assessments, exercise prescriptions, and programming. We get into special populations, whether we're talking about those youth athletes or older individuals, and maybe some disease states that they might be dealing with, injury prevention, behavior modification. Like I said, there is so much contained in this one resource that it is valuable for anyone at all in the industry. So, um,
And don't forget, there are videos that are associated with the book. So if you're wanting to, perfect your skill on doing some of the assessments, for example, all the different skin fold locations,
mhm.
show the correct way to mark those and measure those. Because if we don't do our assessments consistently and accurately, it's not going to give us very good information to track over time.
Absolutely, and those videos are valuable too, because everyone there's so much good information in here, but some people are more visual learners than others, and they can really take advantage of those videos. I think in general, our attention spans are probably going that way to watch a video and kind of learn that way. As a professor, I'm sure you've experienced that too. So go ahead, definitely pick up your copy. It's on the Human Kinetics website, us.humankinetics.com. I know it's on Amazon, probably many other places that you can find the book. So Dr. Bushman, I sincerely thank you for your time. I'll give you the last word here for another take-home message and let everyone know like how they can keep up with all this great information.
I think I'd finish like I used to finish my classes. My last class, I would put a slide up with a picture frame, and underneath it, it said, "You can make a difference, capital U. And as fitness professionals, you have an amazing ability to make a real difference in individuals' lives, in your clients' lives. And so take that seriously and enjoy the ability to have such an impact. It really is it's an amazing profession, very rewarding. It's a lot of work, but the rewards for you as well as your clients when you go to that high level, they just pay off.
Yep. Excellent way to put it to wrap it up there. Again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and have a good rest of your day.
All right. Thank you so much.